And we are live. It is Friday, September 11th, 2020. I don't want to talk about the date. It just upsets me. Um, and I have nothing useful or interesting to say on the subject of the date. Um, so I'm just going to pretend it's a normal day and that it's not September 11th. It's not the 19th anniversary of uh, the worst day in our modern national life. Um, and I'm going to let Kate introduce our guest while I attempt to bring him in.
Okay.
Kate, the floor is yours, but just remember what you have to end it with.
Oh. Oh, okay. I think we're like, I'm like, um, we our guest today is Ben Smith. He is a columnist for the New York Times, and he was previously the editor of BuzzFeed. Kind of had a very interesting and storied career in journalism over the past couple of years. I remember reading his column, I think when it was where I think that it was in Politico, right? Like I think that that's for like the back in 2008. Um, anyways, at some point, Ben and I got to know each other, and he is wonderful and funny, and I think that this will be an interesting conversation. We are not allowed to have fun anymore, but in lieu of fun, we will in fact have Ben Smith on the show. We're just trying to figure out the tech.
I'm just trying to figure out which unnamed user he is here. Is he user
Yes,
9A1CDB?
yes, yes.
Okay. I'm bringing that user in. And if this turns out to be somebody other than Ben Smith, then we're not allowed to have fun anymore. And we're not allowed to have Ben Smith. We'll have a really surprised guest.
This is
All
me.
right.
Yes,
There should
Ben.
now be a either Ben Smith or a very surprised person coming up on the screen momentarily, except that it's not working. So, Kate, why don't you monologue about something? And I will continue to, unless you want me to monologue about
I
something.
mean, I can't. I would you're better at monologuing. But I am do not have the magic buttons to bring in Ben Smith, so I'll let you figure it out. The What am I going to monologue about on September 11th? That's not about September 11th. Let's see. Um, there is someone give me a topic. Oh, talk ladder and tomatoes, Kate. Okay, sure. Um, he's on his phone. That is maybe why this is a little bit difficult. So he's going to switch to his laptop. That's what I just got a message from Ben Smith. Um, so let's see, moles, snakes, beans. Okay, all of these things I can talk about. Garden. Okay. So I have a lot of garden pictures that I've been posting on Twitter because I have a lot of produce that came in. All of us. Oh my God, I'm all alone. Just, everyone, everyone left me. Um, in lieu of fun, it's just Kate. Um, so let's see. Beans, garden, tomatoes. I put up 8 quarts of tomatoes in the last couple of days. Beans are coming in. It is officially fall feeling here. And uh, all of the leaves in the tomatoes are starting to turn yellow, which is kind of, kind of nice. Um, and yeah, I have not caught the mole in my front yard. There remains a spy in my front yard that lives amongst me, us, and that is, still happening. Someone asked about the paper bag art behind me. That is Lisa Page, the Lisa Page puppet, because one time Lisa Page was supposed to come on the show, but because of professional obligations was not allowed to come on the show. And so instead, we made a paper bag puppet and Lisa texted me answers and she as she watched the show. It was pretty fun. Um and Ben is back. This is comforting. I feel less alone now, even though I had all of you. I don't like being the adult. Um
All right. Well, I have now successfully invited other Ben on the screen. he has accepted and is connecting. So let's see what happens.
It's gonna be. It's we're just gonna have to find out. Yeah, I don't know. I also tried not to spend the day thinking about what the day was. I don't know how to. I don't really know how to do that. Like, I don't really know how to be respectful about it without kind of like getting sad and wallowing and I don't know, remembering unpleasant things.
How old
So
were you on September 11th, 2001?
I was 17 and I was a senior in high school.
And was it and how disruptive of the like of a 17-year-old in Rochester's life was it?
Well, my mom was on a flight to New York that day for a conference. So it was pretty disruptive. I was like, she turned out to be fine, but until I knew that, I was panicking a little bit. And then I just remember I had first period gym class and I came out of gym class and there was a big screen TV in the main commons cafeteria and it was only turned on for like the NCAA finals and I don't know, like some like huge events, and it was on and there was a huge crowd of people around the TV. And that was
And
the first time
Ben
we heard.
Smith.
Hi, Ben. Are you in a car?
Hey guys. I am. You can see me all right? I'm not driving.
Okay.
I'm on the side of the New York State Thruway. I'm over ambitious at making it back home.
We can see you just fine, and we can hear you multiple times. Are you? I think you may have some feedback.
Uh-oh. Gosh, we should have ironed this all out in advance. Am I still feeding back?
Yeah. But it's okay. We'll make it work. Do you have headphones?
Even if we just have to, we have to ask you yes or no questions, and you can nod or shake your head. It can be like charades with Ben Smith. Ben Smith, welcome to In Lieu of Fun.
But it's okay. This is pretty funny. I'm so sorry, Ben, that you like are trapped in your car with us.
Wait, did you lose me again, or am I still here? Have you still got me here?
We are actually now. Yeah, you're pretty unintelligible.
Oh, come on.
Sorry.
I'm gonna reload it one more time.
Okay.
All right.
I have to say that there should just be. Kathleen made that awesome bloopers reel for us, Catherine, and we should also have one of just like really smart people with tech issues. That just like really
you mean like just like the most underutilized people. Here's like Albert Einstein, but he can't we can't actually hear him. Right?
Yes, exactly.
How's that?
That's much better.
Way better.
Okay. I was just going to say, I think that you are the very smart people with tech issues. I'm fine, just for the record.
Okay, so here's my first question. How did you end up joining In Lieu of Fun from the side of the New York Thruway? Because we've had people join with bees, and we've had people join while doing pottery, but we have never had somebody pull over to the side of the road to join In Lieu of Fun.
So I'm like a massive optimist. And so I do things like thinking that I will be in upstate New York where I want to be by 5 p.m., underestimating traffic, staying too long at the Hungarian bakery on Amsterdam Avenue for a cup of coffee with somebody, and then picking up
right near where I went to elementary school.
Really?
And then Coronet Pizza was probably there then, and then and then
it was
suddenly realizing I'm not going to make it and pulling over.
Wow. So is the Hungarian pastry shop still as weird as I remember it from my grade school days?
I would think so. It's pretty strange. I have some strudel. Nicely, Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty strange.
Okay. Kate, get us started. Should we start with Andrew Sullivan?
Oh yeah, let's just dig into it. I don't know. It wasn't. I
How
just
pissed
kind of.
is he at you?
Yeah,
That you'd have to ask him. I can't.
that's fair. I have a confession, which I've talked about on the show, was that I read your piece and I really thought that it was not that. I thought that it was like pretty down the middle of the road and pretty like fair, but that apparently was not the takeaway that he and other people had. So, yeah, Jamel was on Tuesday and had and I thought it was interesting to hear his take because you reference him obviously and like how he'd kind of both been
What was
like
his take?
Yeah, Men, do you have kind of a memory of like kind of what Jamel said?
No.
Jamel was, I think, reasonably irritated by the sort of unrepentance about the Murray Herrnstein stuff. I actually thought your piece about Andrew was super fair. He's somebody
That's
of
what I thought
enormous
too.
accomplishments and who's philosophically very difficult to classify, who's a person of significant passions and who's got some blind spots, including that he really errs on the glib side about certain things. And the publication of that was an example, I think, frankly, more of his glibness than of his propensity to racism. He was just like, oh, here's something we can throw out that would be interesting. And I was actually, the thing that really
I thought it was
surprised.
more than that. I mean, like, because basically we're talking about race and IQ, and I think the sort of like, there's a question of like, why are we talking about race as a biological phenomenon in the first place? That seems totally insane to me. And then there's the like, well, actually we're talking about subgroups and we're going to make it very, very clinical and we're going to avoid types of Jews and black people. And then you start talking about it. It's like, well, I mean, like the Jews are pretty smart. And it just seems like, oh, okay, like most of the people who are obsessed with race and IQ, are wearing white hoods. It is possible that there are some who aren't, but why? But when the place that it comes from is I'm looking to justify my sort of like kind of slightly random observed stereotypes of my social circle, it just seems crazy.
No, so I agree with that. I
Yep.
thought I thought the most interesting thing about that article, frankly, was that he still kind of doubles down on it, agreeing with the substance. Or at least flirting with the substance of it. Whereas when he did it, it really felt more like, oh, these two guys have written a book that's making a lot of people upset. Let's take the part that's making everybody upset, throw it out there, and have all of 15 people from the New Republic respond to it. It felt to me more like he was sort of sponsoring a food fight. But then in his conversation with you, he actually really seemed to be having a pretty flirtatious relationship with the substance of the idea in that chapter, which is actually, to me, they're different problems. But I was quite surprised at how unwilling he was to say, yeah, it's errant nonsense, but it was a great debate, which was how I understood him to be saying it at the time.
So the other thing that I think is fascinating about this is that I understood, and maybe I was being overly generous, and like I'm curious both of your thoughts on this. I always understood it, his defense of it and his unwillingness to back down, as being more about like a commitment to free speech and the ability to ask really, really controversial, really apolitical questions. And I thought that was kind of one of the reasons that he doubled down, but maybe that's too generous. I don't know.
Yeah, honestly, that's what I thought. And I said that to him more or less, like, just to understand, like what you're saying here is that you ought to be able to talk about this, not that you've reached some conclusion that
Right.
like black people have lower IQs, and he then said, no, that's the direction the data go. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like you gave him a lot of rope and he hung himself. Like, I guess more or less.
Yeah, I think Andrew
So tell me,
sometimes a guy.
What do you say?
Like, you give him even a little rope and he immediately wraps it around his neck and starts jumping up and down. Oh, and I think Andrew has an impulse when you give him rope to wrap.
Yes.
his greatest comfort with a rope is when he's tying it around his own neck. So talk about the transition between running BuzzFeed News and commenting on media for the New York Times.
Yeah, I was surprised when you did the first jump from columnist to head of BuzzFeed. And then I was equally surprised when you went back. I thought that was going to be like a one-way, you were just going to stay on the editor side of things for a while. Thought it was a one-way ratchet.
I don't know. I mean, the most fun part of journalism is the actual journalism. And I guess, I really loved running BuzzFeed and like so proud of what we did there and what they're doing now. But also those jobs, you really have to be 100% present to run a newsroom and totally into it. And there's no way to lean back a little bit. And so I think at some point, did it for 8 years and felt like I probably can't keep doing this. And this thing popped up, and it's just such a, in some sense, I've been kind of reporting on the media for the last 8 years and figuring out what was going on. And I love reporting and writing, and it was sort of a, just felt like something I wanted to do.
So how would you sum up, how would you describe your column? Like what your aim of your column is, and kind of like how you like both just in terms of like actual form, like how long do you shoot for? I've noticed it's a lot longer than other columns. Like it seems longer to me.
They're letting me go too long.
Oh, really? I like it.
I mean, okay. I don't know. I guess I'm trying to, honestly, like it's some mixture of what are the big interesting questions in media and where can I break news? Because I don't really think I don't know. I'm not, I lack Ben's sort of idea. Like if you're going to be a successful opinion journalist, you need a real project. You need to know what you're out to prove and be really committed to a point of view. And I'm not. I'm a reporter, and so I think and I don't think that there's one way to do journalism particularly, and so I think I'm more interested in trying to get to the bottom of stuff. What'd you say?
I said, could you tell that to a bunch of your colleagues for us? I feel like what you just said is exactly right, but it doesn't seem to stop many opinion writers from bad takes these days.
But yeah,
the job of an opinion writer
isn't that the point? Like everybody in their heart knows that the best columns over time are reported columns.
Yeah.
But most people have good journalists have 3 or 4 years of good opinion writing in them. And then they've got to actually get some new information at some point. But then you get your David Ignatiuses who never stop reporting. And that column has a duration that most other columns don't have. And so why don't more opinion writers understand that actually the line between opinion writing and reporting is a writing line, not a methodological line. It's not shouldn't be the question of whether you actually do the reporting.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think, I don't know. I sort of admire people who can write pure opinion. It's just not you really have to have strong opinions, I think, or else you fake it and just try to provoke and wind up, nowhere.
I don't trust people with strong opinions. Is that a weird thing to say? I have
I feel like your colleague here has pretty strong opinions.
Oh yeah, but I don't. I have never met Ben in person, so we don't.
Yeah, we only exist in 2 dimensions with respect to each other. But the other thing is, I actually, I have but most of what I do is analyze documents.
I was just going to say, it's opinions, but they're based on fact, or after years and years of fact in journalism, in specific areas.
Yeah. And also, Kate would throw me under the bus in a heartbeat, because if she ever had the opportunity, she'd be like, "Oh, that guy." I mean, I I just did a show with him. I was like, we don't actually know each other.
We're coming up on doing this show for this is day 169 in a row that we have done this show at 5 o'clock. And it is tomorrow is my 6th month out of New York City and in quarantine. So this is like, I will say that this has been completely crazy. Have you stayed in New York the whole time, Ben? Ben Wittes.
No, I've been back and forth to upstate. I've been back and forth to the Hudson Valley. Increasingly, there's some internal divisions in my family about where we should be, and I'm the one trying to accommodate everyone.
Yeah. Your kids are your kids school age?
They're 16, 15, and 11. So I've abandoned them in the city this weekend, in fact.
Sounds right. Do we have a question?
Joyce, the floor is yours.
Hey, Ben. I was wondering if all this time later you had any subsequent thoughts about your decision to release the Steele dossier?
Did you hear that, Ben?
I caught decision to release the Steele dossier. Sorry, I
just wondered if you had any subsequent thoughts, with all of the blowback that's happened and the it's been.
I kind of don't. I think I'm a bit of a zealot on the question of not, as a reporter, overthinking the political consequences of what you do. There have been moments, I think, when it seemed like, wow, the publication of the Steele dossier sort of opened this big question of Trump and Russia. There have been times when it seemed almost like the opposite, and that it had overbuilt people's expectations to a point where the Trump-Russia question, where the reality paled a little. But I think those weren't really that's not how I made that decision. And I don't want to pretend it was. And it was just obviously a document that was in the public interest for people to know it was what their elites were talking about, in the context of it clearly not having been verified. And so, I tend not to overthink things.
Yeah.
So you guys, more broadly, BuzzFeed News had this fascinating role in the entire Trump-Russia saga, which, started with the decision to publish the Steele dossier, continues through Anthony Cormier and Jason Leopold's doing this incredible reporting on the Trump Tower Moscow, on Felix Sater, on a whole series of really significant events, and then has this kind of spectacular quasi-crash, which turns out to be a little bit more complicated than it seemed when when the two of them reported that Michael Cohen had been asked to lie by the president, and then the special counsel's office denied or seemed to deny the report, which was then sort of validated and sort of not in the Mueller report. And so I'm interested in your reflections on Joyce's question, but covering the whole swath of BuzzFeed News. You guys punched way above your weight in some ways. You also flew a little too close to the sun in some ways. How do you feel about the aggregate of the work you guys did on the Russia story?
I feel incredibly proud of it. Part of the way we punched above our weight is that this is a story that, like most national security stories, exists largely in handouts from the Justice Department and from prosecutors to favored reporters at the Washington Post and New York Times who shape the narrative in the way and at the time that prosecutors would like it shaped. I think ultimately that when you look back at what happened, what is the Trump-Russia story? Was he being blackmailed? What's going on? I think the Moscow Tower is probably the single most significant element of the whole thing that we really know. In the summer of 16, trying to do a deal and give Vladimir Putin the penthouse. And this is undisputed. This is documented. It's totally clear. There were drawings of the building. It's not hand wavy MSNBC stuff. And so that's, I mean, that in particular, I think was just a huge revelation. I mean, honestly, like, to me, I thought that the way that the media, and particularly the sort of Justice Department reporters of the big outlets, reacted to this bullshit non-denial from Robert Mueller was shameful. Like, you know, if you're a reporter, you have government officials every day saying that story isn't true. And you say, what's not true about the story? And they say, we won't tell you. And that is always basically confirmation. And and this was, you just happened to hit at a moment when they were like selling votive candles with Robert Mueller's face on them at like boutique.
I have one of those.
And you know, and now I think that has totally changed. Like, turned out he was a prosecutor and a politician, not some kind of god. And I think in retrospect, like, our report triggered a sort of a congressional process that like threatened to come totally out of control and to take the investigation out of his hands. And sort of, and I think he, in his really truly, like, felt like he wanted to tell the story in a certain way that he believed was true and to have under his control and to not have it leak out in pieces and not have House committees start jumping ahead of him. And the notion that Trump directed Cohen to lie, which Cohen like is obviously alleging now, which we reported he alleged, and he is clearly alleging it. You know, the House was going to impeach him for it, and Mueller was trying to hit the brakes, and it's totally understandable, but it's not. And certainly there are, you know, then you can sort of like argue in a more micro way about the story, but I felt like the notion that what it means to get it wrong is to have a popular and powerful public prosecutor say that you got it wrong just isn't how this stuff works. And I was really kind of appalled that reporters thought it was.
And you're thinking, can I name names, particularly of the Washington Post's immediate use of the denials to do a "how did BuzzFeed fuck this up" story?
Oh yeah, they ought to retract that story. I'm surprised they haven't.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I just want to say, as one of the few people who did not in any sense repudiate that story at the time, I agree that you guys made a technical error, and you got grazed with a brick or grazed with a stone, and the press treated it like with some degree of triumph, like you'd been run over by a train. And I think the story in retrospect contains more truth than falsehood, and certainly advanced new ground on a bunch of points. So I without saying that the story was perfect, I do think that the reaction to that story, the errors in the reaction were greater than the errors in the story.
And given that you're the
David
final
Batts,
referee,
the floor is yours.
You know.
That I'm what?
You're like the
I'm
final
sorry, I didn't
judge.
hear you.
You're the court of final appeal. I said that you're the court of final appeal.
Well,
on
I
this particular
certainly
question, so I appreciate that.
Indeed, I don't. I mean, although I do have to say that, like my view of it is controversial. I mean, I have expressed that view, and people pull me aside to say, BuzzFeed really fucked that up, and that like you pissed off a lot of people in big media organizations, and I've never been able to tell if that's because you were like a little bit cheeky and punching way above your weight, or whether it was because like people really have it in for not so much for Cormier, but for Jason Leopold, or whether it was
No,
just a kind of competitive thing.
I think it was more like Mueller just worked the media just incredibly well. Like, he did a better job working the media than he did writing the damn report. I mean, it was incredible. Have you ever seen anybody get that kind of adoration?
Yeah, that's a great point.
All right, David Batts, this time for real. The floor is really yours.
Okay. Well, thanks so much. Moving a little bit away from politics, although you could say it is rather explosive from time to time. But following up on your Twitter bio, you are a fan of fireworks. So, what is your favorite type of firework, and what is your not gross favorite fireworks mishap story?
Oh, I've never had a horrible fireworks mishap, thank God. And I'm actually newly sort of a fireworks enthusiast. There was this great New York Times article that, there was a just totally insane rumor that, the fireworks being shot off in New York and other cities in this kind of mind-bending summer were like a police psyop to disrupt communities. And the Times
I missed that.
Very diligently assigned 3 quite good reporters who just got to the bottom of it. And at the bottom of it, they reported that fireworks enthusiasts were purchasing fireworks and setting off the fireworks. And then that because fireworks were fun, it encouraged other people to become fireworks enthusiasts. And it just happened that I was driving back from the West, and there's a reservation in Montana where you can just buy anything. And so my kids and I just loaded up on fireworks and crossed some state lines, I have to admit. And I guess I like the mortar.
And you had immoral purposes when you crossed those state lines with those explosive devices.
Yeah, and I guess I do like the mortars best. I'm very cautious, but they're pretty amazing.
Ben has
Baby Cannon agrees.
Thing. Do you know about Baby Cannon, Ben? Ben Smith? God, this is so confusing. Ben Smith, do you know about Baby Cannon that Ben Winnis does?
I am on the internet, Kit.
Whoa!
I'm on the internet.
Wow. I didn't know about Baby Cannon before I met Ben.
Baby
You're
Cannon.
Off writing law review articles.
Yeah,
that's
sorry.
Right. Instead of hanging out on the internet waiting for the next Trump-Russia story. So I've been trying to bring Tony Cava in to ask his question, but he seems to be resisting. So he asks, I've been of the opinion that given their business model, news organizations like the New York Times, the Washington Post, etc., are actually dependent on Trump for the clicks and eyeballs he delivers, and thus have a fiduciary responsibility to normalize him and keep him viable for as long as possible. I extend this critique to management and not to reporters. That said, is it a valid stance, or am I just being a jerk?
I think you're just...
I think he said jerk. I think that's where he was going before he glitched.
Yeah, he's all glitched out now. And so we can sort of speculate on what he would be saying.
Yeah, he's being. I think that he thinks that Tony Cava is a jerk, which is going to rile some in lieu of fun listeners. But it's a good question. I am not seeing.
Which of course in turn raises the really important philosophical question, Kate. Is there any fate worse, or is this a vision of hell, than being stuck at the side of the New York Thruway, glitching on a crowd?
I literally am I can't. I kind of am just so it's so funny that he's on the side of the New York State Thruway. I'm so flattered that he was so committed to this that he is on the side of the New York State Thruway to be on in lieu of fun. Yes. Hi. What were
you were just about to tell Tony Cava that he was being a jerk when you glitched out.
Yes. You censored me, obviously. I think there's a more.
So what's the answer?
Which is that there's something a little more complicated happening, which is that these news organizations are now all selling subscriptions. They don't care as much about the clicks or the outrage, but they do want you to feel like not only are they giving you important information, but they're like on your side. And I do think that, and I think the Times actually culturally is sort of resisting it more than other outlets, but just that the kind of inevitable pull of subscription is toward something more like the British newspaper landscape, where ideological factions get their own newspapers rather than something advertising driven that's just trying to reach everybody. Although the Times' business, is thriving, but also to a surprising degree is driven by the cooking and crossword apps.
No, that's actually, I've heard that. I've heard that their model is like basically like someone better not make the Craigslist of cooking, because then like the entire Times business model will fall apart again.
Yeah, then we're all out of work.
But actually, I think there's, I gotta say, as somebody like, just Lawfare's business model, which granted we're not a for-profit organization, but what's our business model is highly specialized information, right? And, the idea that the New York Times is saying, okay, we're publishing 70, 80,000 words a day, maybe more now. Which are the parts of that are specialized to committed readerships enough that you can actually subsidize the rest of the operation on the basis of it? Again, it's not Washington politics, right? But the people who cook, I don't know, the people who really committed to that crossword puzzle who cook, they'll pay for that.
Yeah, but I think it is also like being, you subscribe to the New York Times. The Washington Post's marketing is much blunter about this, but to stand with a free press against Donald Trump, and it's part of your identity. And the Times ran an ad campaign that basically says that, although I think it shies away from quite saying it. And I think, so I do think that, in a boring Biden administration, some of that slows, although it just doesn't seem to me that the kind of like deep ideological conflicts and the sort of right-wing attacks on the press are going anywhere.
Yeah. Do you think it does slow, or do you think the modality of it changes, right? And you go from the press being oppositional with respect to the administration to the press being oppositional with respect to the world of people who are, making stuff up, who are, sort of engaged in kind of information warfare against, it's not that the press would be behind the administration, because that's not its role. But if you imagine the press would be sort of pro-fact, right? And you had a pro-fact administration, you end up in a kind of weird temporary alliance between the two, no?
Yeah, I think there's nothing kind of more boring and corrosive than like being the attack dog of the presidency.
Well,
so I think that, I hope the press won't do that.
Elizabeth DeRicco. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kate.
It's okay. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Let me unmute Elizabeth.
Oh, unmute.
Elizabeth, the floor is yours.
So my question is about the business model as a follow-up to...
or not.
No, I can hear her. Ben, I can hear her.
Oh, I can't.
Okay, go ahead, Elizabeth.
I'd rather Kate hear me than Ben, so that's okay.
You can't
so
hear
my
that.
question is about the business model and the sort of proliferation. I remember when BuzzFeed was sort of a suspect media source. And so how do we sort out where the credibility is coming from? And I heard yesterday Bulwark is going towards a, freemium for the newsletter model, and then $100 a year for an enhanced version. And I'm seeing that on a lot of my subscriptions. And how do you think that's going to sort out and settle out as you cover these issues?
Great question. Ben Smith, did you hear all of that?
Yeah, I think I mean, I think it's a really complicated landscape, and it's going to settle in a bunch of different directions. I mean, I do think part of it is that, BuzzFeed, is from the internet, and for a generation of people, they, I think, had a better sense of what we were doing and the people who kind of grew up reading it had a better sense of what we were doing than people for whom it just was this like weird cat website. But also, I mean, the thing is, like, you get credibility by breaking news and telling people things they didn't know that turn out to be true. To a degree, you also just get it by having an old brand that people vaguely remember. Like, there are these zombie brands like Newsweek floating around that, kind of trade on this kind of weird remnant credibility.
For one generation.
I do think that broadly you're seeing this shift toward these subscription models in a way that, I don't know, I find kind of worrisome, because I think, if the New York Times hits its wildest subscription goals, like beyond wildest, 10% of Americans would subscribe to the Times. And in reality, it's going to be more like 2 or 3%. And maybe throw in all the other papers combined and you get to 6 or 7%, which means like 90+% of people aren't subscribing. And if the sort of rule becomes high quality news exists behind paywalls to subscribers, and what you get on Facebook is second quality rehash and propaganda, like, that's a real, I think, sort of systematic problem.
So what do you do about that?
I do think it's in the interest of I think the platforms, to a degree that they're starting to realize, have a real interest in keeping quality news free. Like, I think,
but even if quality news
breaking the platform.
Even if quality news is free, that doesn't solve the problem. Because, first of all, quality news will migrate to where the ads are in terms of a certain degree of amount of emphasis. There's much less local news than there used to be. And that's a function of where ad revenue is available, right? And so being free is only a partial, it doesn't entirely solve the problem. What's more, it will focus on, even within the national news environment, it will focus on certain areas as opposed to others. For example, Congress will be overcovered relative to federal agencies, right? These are things that we know will happen, because if you're relying on the clicks, those are biasing too. People want to be outraged by Ted Cruz. They want to be outraged. Conservatives want to be outraged by Adam Schiff. And you're going to get, there's a bias inherent in the click-based advertising model as well as in the subscription model. No?
Yeah. So yes, for sure. And both of them, neither is new to the internet, right? You always had, ideological subscription publications and screaming tabloids desperate to sell copies on newsstands with crazy covers. And obviously, that does not say that that's the same, but these are sort of intrinsic to the business models.
So how do you understand your role now? You're a reporter, you're focusing on this area, you're supposed to write opinion. How do you put it together in your day?
Yeah, okay, so first of all, the Times is a very weird place, and the whole landscape of what is opinion right now is a mess. And I'm actually on the news side of the New York Times. I am a news columnist. Me and Kevin Roos and Ginnia Belafonte, the great New York columnist. The distinction between what I do and like what my old colleague Charlie Warzel does is like, you could be forgiven for not entirely understanding what it is. One is reported opinion and the other is opinionated reporting, I guess. But I guess I see
that is like really well put.
Going after, I see it as, going after something that I think will be broadly interesting, trying to turn up something that you didn't know that sheds light on it, and then in a way that hopefully isn't too heavily on the scale, saying it kind of, here's what I think about it, but I'm not going to scold. I'm trying to avoid being a scold or sort of like not leaving space for you to agree with my facts and disagree with my take.
Yeah. I think that when Charlie was on the show, and and Charlie and I have done like talked a few times and done a few things together. But like I kind of drilled down on him with this, which I was just like, I don't understand the ways in which all of the things that you're doing, like the incredible Ring story was actually my biggest thing about the surveillance via Ring technology.
I'm just moving into the shade. Don't mind me.
Yeah. I was like, are you moving your car? I was very worried that like the police had pulled over and been like, why is this guy on the side of the New York State Thruway talking to himself?
I just want to point out that this is the first time a guest on In Lieu of Fun has ever been actually driving a car. So we're now experiencing a first on In Lieu of Fun. The guest is operating a motor vehicle. And that's dangerous. Do not try that at home. Do not be a guest on a show while operating a motor vehicle. You park your vehicle before you appear on the show. But it appears it was accomplished safely. The guest is now in the shade. He has not been arrested, nor has he been annihilated by oncoming traffic.
So, Ben Smith, what is the take that you have? Like, has it been strange getting back into the rhythm of journalism again, like since going to the Times? That's my first question. My second question is, I'm always very curious about the anxiety around people who write daily or weekly columns, like how they think up doing things, like what the take is going, what like the topic is going to be. Do you feel that way, or is that it's just kind of like this is actually like a dream come true? You have a million things you want to write about and you're ready to write about them every week?
I guess on the former, it's hard to know what's weird because I have this weird job and what's weird because there's a global pandemic and I never put pants on anymore. I mean, in the car I do, but so I don't know.
This is the first time we've ever had a guest who admitted he was not wearing
honestly,
pants.
I kind of came up as a blogger. Like I was writing 10 or 15 times a day for Politico. And there's a sort of like
that.
way
I was a
when you report a lot and the more you're calling people, the more you're getting information, the more you're kind of talking to readers, the more you're getting, the more you're generating. And like, to me, the anxiety is that once a week is like very infrequent. And and I was worried that it would sort of like fossilize me a little, but I guess I've tried to like jam a lot of reporting into each column. Like each one is like 20 blog items is how I think about it.
It is. That's exactly what it kind of feels like. I feel like you're kind of like, you would have broken each of those little pieces out in various points or like had little tidbits, but you put them all into one place.
Yeah, and sometimes I am like, if you look closely, there'll be like a parenthetical that you're like, wait, this has nothing to do with this column, and you've dropped it in almost entirely at random in the middle of a section about something else because it's a small scoop, which I do.
Oh, now I'm going to look for those. Those are going to be like the Ben Smith Easter eggs.
I was initially thinking I would do the little thing in the old-timey Washington columns, like Washington merry-go-round, where it would just be like item, star, 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 item, star, 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 or like one long item, and then a couple little gossipy things.
Yes, exactly.
Still waiting for an opportunity to do that.
That sounds pretty great.
Wow, that was a lull.
Yeah,
I can't tell. No, because we can't tell.
We have a delay.
When there's a brief lull, you can't really tell if it's a lag or a lull, and you don't know if you start talking whether you're going to be interrupting somebody, and so that's actually a problem. I want to ask another thing about the change from BuzzFeed to the New York Times, which is, do you get the sort of respectability bounce in social interactions, or B, the hip dip more, as in have you gained social cachet for being like, because now you're at the New York Times, or do you get the oh man, you used to be so hip, you used to run BuzzFeed News, and now you're like, a stodgy old man at the New York Times. Which is a bigger feature of people's interactions with you?
You know, my old boss, Jonah Peretti, when we were hiring initially, he always said, and it was so true, people who cared more about what their parents thought than what their friends thought would always like go to the Times. And people who cared more what their friends thought than what their parents thought would work for BuzzFeed. My kids definitely were like actively unimpressed. I don't know. It's some of both. People definitely respond quicker to your unsolicited emails. It's amazing. NYT inquiry.
I remember that in such a big way when I went to the Washington Post. All of these people all of a sudden had nothing better to do than to return my calls and return my emails.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's very difficult. And like, I actually just advised a friend, albeit before the pandemic, to go to the Times instead of going to like a new kind of startup. But I think that was actually I was like one of the few people who told them that, like, they were kind of on the fence and everyone was telling them to go to the Times because people would just return your calls more and like it would be easier to report things out. And so I don't know. I think that it's a real thing. People really do like return your calls more when you have kind of a legacy media. And if that's what matters to you is good reporting, then it's probably easier to report from like a perch in the New York Times than it would be to report from something new. But maybe that's wrong. I don't know.
I mean, there is this old line that access is a curse, and I think it's basically true. Like, it's in some ways.
I've never heard that.
The best way to get powerful people to talk to you is you find something out and they have to talk to you, and it doesn't matter where you're calling from because you've got this big pile of secret documents and they just kind of deal with you. And the stories that come too easy, often there's something wrong with them. So I don't know. I guess I'm a little uncomfortable with the sort of like with the ease of access that comes with the Times. Although it's also like this incredible luxury that you say, hey, you know what? Particularly on the, I guess this is in a way, on the beats the parts of the beat that I don't know much about. It is really fun to just start digging into a story about Disney, and halfway through, the phone rings and it's Bob Iger, right? And you're kind of like, hey, I'm learning about Disney. How does it work, Bob Iger? Like, that is a luxury.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the good story is not Bob Iger's version of how Disney works, right? Like, you can get that from his masterclass or his autobiography. So the yeah, I don't know. I mean, the other thing they say about the Times is that it's a great place to have worked.
Oh, yes.
Spoken like
Fair
a
enough.
future ex-New York Times reporter. Ben Smith, thank you so much for joining us. We should let you get back to your evening commute to get back on the New York State Thruway, not live streaming your life to the In Lieu of Fun community. We will be back tomorrow, folks, with a Just Us edition where we will answer whatever questions you may have about life, the universe, and everything. We will plan the show.
Ben has a question.
Oh,
I just wanted to say thank you, and that I really was impressed by your that someone in your audience was making Tom Lehrer jokes. That is a very
I sent Mike Fromberger a note about that.
Way to my heart. So
Tom Lehrer, he's still alive. He is in his mid-90s, and he's a great American. He should come on In Lieu of Fun. We will be back in 23 hours and 2 minutes. And until then, Kate, what do we say?
We don't have fun anymore, but in lieu of fun, we have Ben Smith in a car on the side of the New York State Thruway, talking about journalism.
And who could ask for more than that? We will see you tomorrow, folks. Ben, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ben.